Jakob Ingebrigtsen's World Championship prospects are in serious danger. The Norwegian has been suffering from an Achilles injury since April, very similar to the one he had last year, except this time it's on the other foot. It has recently been announced that he is out for the Silesia and Brussels Diamond Leagues that were set to take place in the coming weeks. Given that we are only 6 weeks away from World Championships and the Brussels Diamond League is barely a month away before the competition, it seems Jakob's chances of competing are in genuine jeopardy. The exact phrasing given by his spokesperson was, "He is still working to get rid of the injury he has sustained in his Achilles." We know he has been training at altitude in St. Moritz, but this seems to imply that it's not just that he lacks fitness after a layoff from training, but that his Achilles is still giving him pain. He has recently posted some track work on his Instagram, which he described as being at race pace. I do notice he is in old Vaporflies instead of spikes, and this did not seem to be a super hard workout by race pace standards. And this does make sense, as spikes do put extra strain on the Achilles, and you obviously want to be extra careful when returning from injury. This is reinforced by some further comments made by a spokesperson. He described the situation as a rush to get back into the hard training, which is not promising language. When asked directly if we should be concerned for the World Championships, he said, "Yes, I definitely think so. When you feel like you're not capable of running the Diamond League 2 weeks before the World Championships start, and you haven't competed all year, that's not good." When further questioned, he said, "We are not giving up on the World Championships yet, but it's looking scarier now than we thought before the summer. We'll have to hope that he can pull a small miracle and come to the World Champs in good shape, but it's going to be a harder and harder task." Pretty upfront language being used there, which I respect, but this obviously does not bode well for Jakob. We also have to bear in mind that it's one thing if you can physically compete at the Champs, but another thing entirely to be in World Championship shape. When we consider that now we have, excluding Jakob, 5 guys that have run 3:27 going into Tokyo, up from 0 going into Paris, the 1500 meter is more competitive than ever. We also have 12 runners that have already run under 3:30 6 weeks out from Tokyo. Prior to last year's Olympics, only 3 people, not including Jakob, had run under 3:30, which were Negus, Timothy Cherritt, and Brian Coleman. Worse yet, there are people like Hocker, Negus, Laros, Koech, and Strand who can reasonably be expected to join this year's sub-330 group and make it 17 people before the Champs. This is of course contingent on Negus qualifying for the World Champs while winning the Diamond League final. Jakob ran a 3:26 personal best before the Olympics and still didn't medal in the event. Granted, he went out at world record pace, but even in prime form, he is arguably not a favourite for 1500 gold. Now the event is even more competitive than last year, which really felt like a 2-horse race between Kerr and Ingebrigtsen, until Hocker spoiled that party. It seems incredibly unlikely that Jakob will be in better shape than last year. I would honestly be surprised if he's in 3:27 shape for the Champs. When asked about whether he would compete in Tokyo, Jakob's spokesperson said, "He probably won't start unless he feels he is in the medal race." Presumably, this applies to the 5000 meters as well, where his medal chances are much higher. But can Jakob recover in time? Let's compare this year's injury to last season, where he was able to bounce back from a similar issue. Jakob's previous injury began in November 2023, with Achilles irritation likely linked to pelvic issues he had suffered in the World Championships, as the pelvis often compensates for Achilles weakness. He missed the European cross-country champs in December for the first time since 2015. This later extended to pulling out of the World Indoor Championships, which were at the start of March 2024. Essentially, Jakob missed the entirety of the 23 to 24 indoor season, and his usual base building phase in training as well. It was announced in March of 2024 that he was pretty much back to full training, and would be set to race the Bowerman Mile against Josh Kerr and Jorrit Negus at the end of May. 2 weeks prior to the event, FlowTrack of all places released a high quality workout of Ingebrigtsen doing some hard 200s and 400s, the 200s being in spikes. In the Bowerman Mile itself, Jakob's 11 Diamond League race win streak would be broken for the first time in 2.5 years, as Josh Kerr would take the win in a new British record after overtaking Jakob with around 600 to go. Ingebrigtsen still finished with a 3:45.6 mile and seemed content with the result, stating he was in better shape than he and his competitors anticipated. So it seems that despite 4 months of injury, Jakob was able to bounce back through 6 weeks of presumably race-specific training and run a 3:45 mile. Pretty miraculous stuff. He would go on to have arguably his best season yet, claiming several Diamond League wins, a double gold in the European Championships, a new 1500 meter PB 7 weeks after the pre-classic, a 5000 meter Olympic gold medal, and finally, obliterate the long-standing 3000 meter world record by 3 seconds. So we've established that he can recover fast and go on to do great things in the season after an injury-ridden winter. This year's timeline is a little different. Jakob managed to have a stellar indoor season, getting a double gold in both the European and World Championships, as well as shattering the indoor mile world record by nearly 2 seconds. His last race was in late March, and it was announced in early May that Jakob had picked up a minor Achilles issue. He returned to Norway, and in mid-May posted a video on his YouTube channel clarifying the situation, and said that he is being cautious and has only been doing cross-training since returning from the camp. By this point, he had pulled out of his initial season opener in the Oslo Bislett Games, which was set to happen on June 12th. Although it was a bad start to the season, the issue did not seem severe. World Champs was far away, and pulling out of Oslo seemed more due to being cautious and wanting to make sure he is in great shape before he races, rather than because the issue was particularly serious. He later pulled out of the Ostrava Golden Spike, which he was set to compete in late June. On June 20th, he would state that he would be nearly back to full training on his Instagram. The Norwegian would continue to rebuild and was set to race Josh Kerr on July 19th in the London Diamond League. However, he pulled out of the event roughly 2 weeks prior, with his spokesperson saying he still needed time to heal. He would post some threshold work on the treadmill saying normal service has resumed on July 14th. July 15th, he would fly out to St. Moritz to begin altitude training. Whilst he has since posted some workouts, it seems he is still continuing to struggle with the Achilles issue even today. To summarise, last season he was injured for around 4 months from mid-November to mid-March. He managed a 6-week block of training and was able to run a 3:45 mile off of just that. He later went on to have one of his best seasons yet. Within 7 weeks of pre and 13 weeks of injury, he was able to come back with a personal best. This year's injury started in mid-May and he was back running around mid-July. But 1 month on from that, he is still getting issues and has not been able to run at full capacity. There are 2 main differences I'm noticing between these 2 injuries, the first of which is that this one seems much more stubborn and reoccurring, even though it's on paper less severe. Whilst initially thought to be fairly minor, he seems to be having lots and lots of setbacks that were unanticipated. And whilst he was off full running for a bit longer last season, the transitional period of building up fitness appeared to be much smoother than this year, where we have not even seen him in spikes yet. The second thing is that I think part of the reason this season's injury will be harder to bounce back from is that it comes at a much worse time in the training calendar. This injury occurred 6 months later than the previous one, and since it has been harder for him to recover than initially suspected, there is real pressure for him to rush the injury back to fitness for Tokyo, and that never bodes well. So the million-dollar question is, how badly does this affect Jakob's chances of medaling in the 1500 and 5000 meters? I think we can safely say his 1500 chances aren't looking good. Given how deep the field is for Tokyo, he needs to beat by far the strongest 1500 meter start list ever assembled in his career, and unless our information about the injury takes a 180, he will certainly not be in PB shape, and especially incapable of gaining success with his usual front-running tactics. There is one positive I think we can draw from this injury, and it could be a blessing in disguise. Stay with me now. It's well established now that Jakob cannot front-run the victory over this deep of a field in a championship race, and since he isn't the best kicker, most people think he should lead the first 800 meters at a solid but controlled rate, maybe 56 to 57 seconds a lap, and then make an extended push to home in the last 700, like he did in the 2024 European Champs. His natural strength and decent speed will make him effective over that distance. It's possible someone else may even do some of the work for him, as we know Nagus and Hocker do front run. Of course, he still needs to be in excellent shape to pull this off, but it's probably his best chance of winning. The reason his injury may help him is that this will likely alter his mindset going into the final. If Jakob was in great shape, I think there is a good chance he would still default to his usual front-running tactics, which I just don't see working unless he can solo a 3:26 time without paces. Front-running is exactly what Jakob is used to, and it's part of his own competitive spirit and ego. He seems to view it as a display of dominance and competitiveness. It's his way of showing everyone that he is levels above everyone else.
I don't think they tried to chase me down, but I think they tried to hold on for as long as they could, so obviously that's a big benefit. I would love to do it myself, but unfortunately there's none. I like to run fast and I like to win, so of course I need to put myself in the front, but I'm always pacing.
It's almost like he's admitting moral defeat by not front-running. He might view a controlled race as effectively saying, I am not good enough to outrun you guys. So even if you can make the argument that a controlled race better suits him, I wouldn't be surprised if his mindset doesn't allow him to take that route and he instead opts for 55-second laps and we see a repeat of Paris and all the other championship races. But if he goes into Tokyo with compromised fitness, in his mind, making a controlled bid for the win is just a result of his injury, not necessarily because he is unable to run away from the field in his prime. And therefore, he may be more likely to run this race smarter rather than defaulting to the tactics that have not worked for the last 3 years. Of course, this is all speculative, and I can't tell you definitively what Jakob's mindset is, but given his competitiveness and how loyal to front running he is, I really do think the injury could help him let go of those tactics for the race, which he otherwise wouldn't be willing to. As for the 5000 meter, you gotta like his chances better given his history in the event. He is also much more versatile in the 5k, as a tactical race suits him quite nicely, but he still has the strength to hang with whatever pace the others can put on him and have energy left to finish fast. I would hesitate to put him as the favourite as we know so little about his state for Tokyo, but I think he has a good chance of medaling and a smaller but still reasonable chance of gold if things go well. His main rivals will be the Americans, Fischer, Hocker, Young, and the Ethiopians, Germer, Gebrewa, and Mahari. It's possible we see a coordinated push to make the pace fast, but based on the history of the 5000 meter, that seems unlikely, especially as Gebrewa is normally unwilling to lead. My guess is that it will be reasonably slow to begin with, maybe even with Hocker controlling the pace like he did in the US trials, and then someone like Fischer will try and drop a hard last mile to wear out the kick of Hocker and Jakob. I think this will work on Hocker, as his PB is quite slow compared to everyone else in the field, and I don't think he'll be able to kick hard off a low 1250s race. But Jakob ran a 12:48 eons ago, so won't be faced by a hard last mile mile unless the race is already being run very fast. As such, I think he has a fighting chance of a medal and even the win unless his competition are much fitter than him and are willing to set a brutal pace from the beginning, which does seem unlikely though. Of course the injury will be a factor, but he says he'll only line up if he's in medal contention shape. So as much havoc as this has caused his season, I think he has a solid chance of a 5,000 meter medal, and his World Championship dreams, the 1500 meter, might not be dead just yet. But there's a big if as to whether he can make the championships in the first place. Let me know your thoughts on all this in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Happy training.